What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back, everyone. This is Lee, and yes, today's the day we'll be talking about the Laowa 65mm 2.8 aperture macro lens. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, right before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that Laowa did send this lens over to me for evaluation, but they do not have any say in my opinion. So, with that said, when they sent this lens over to me, I told them that I do have a Nikon Z camera, right? But I forgot to tell them, my camera is full frame. This lens is designed for APS-C. So what happens when you stick an APS-C lens on a 24 megapixel full frame Nikon camera? You get 10 megapixel. Yes, you'll be looking at 10 megapixel samples. So just keep that in mind. And it's kind of my fault. So yeah, if you got a Z50, that might be a better choice. But anyways, this lens costs $400 USD and it has 9 blades and 14 elements. Now, in my first test, I'm going to compare it versus my Canon macro lens, and that lens costs roughly $1,300 USD, and we'll be scanning a film negative. And this is what it looks like at f8. Now, as you can clearly see that the Laowa is 10 megapixel while the Canon is 24 megapixel, and this is what it looks like after I downsample the 24 to match the 10. As you can already tell, it looks very identical. So when you downsample a 24 megapixel down to a 10 megapixel file, you essentially get slight sharpness in your file. And the only way to see that is if you zoom in 300%. And as you can see, there are slight hints of areas where you get slight detail. So with all that in mind, moral of the story is just get a higher megapixel camera than a 10 megapixel. Yes, that's all me. Just to be fair, back in the days, I used to do billboards at 7 megapixel with some Photoshop magic. I think that was 2005. That was a long time ago. But anyway, so for the next test, I'm doing a cinematic reel of myself planting my succulent plant in this glass container. And essentially Nikon Z6II just had an upgrade where you could do 4K at 60p, but it's in crop mode. So that means that the Laowa lens, being an APS-C lens, fits perfectly for this particular format. And as for my last test, I'm taking pictures of bugs and reptiles, of course, as usual. And let me say, this is still 10 megapixels. So if you own the Nikon Z50, that's 20 megapixel. If you own the Fujis, they're like 26 megapixel. And as for the Canon, I think the maximum is around 32 megapixel. If you own any of those brands out there, a proper crop sensor APS-C camera, you'll probably get a better result than me. This is just 10 megapixel. So in conclusion, is the Laowa 65mm 2.8 aperture macro lens any good? I'll have to say that at $400 USD, you are getting a steal. The lens quality is comparable to my L-glass lens, and it costs $1,300 USD. Now, that lens is also big and bulky, but I know it has autofocus. And for those people that have been watching my channel, you guys know autofocus on macro lens is pretty slow. I usually do manual on macro anyway, so that's just something for people to know. Now, there is a slight con on this lens, and that's just the electronics. There is no electronics on this lens. There is none for some interesting reason. The reason why I say that is because the Micro Four Thirds do have the electronics, so you will get XF data. This lens do not have any of that, so just keep in mind if you're one of those folks that do like to organize your files, you're looking for XF data, this is probably not the lens for you, but quality-wise, this is a really good lens. So with all that said, thank you guys for checking me back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely click like and subscribe. And yep, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one, all right? Take it easy. Peace.